Coming along, everybody. So hello to everybody online on Zoom. Thank you so much for logging on today, and hello to everyone in person on campus as well. So as I said before to people just sitting in the room, so apologies for repeating myself, but just for the benefit of those of you joining us online, if you wouldn't mind just scanning the QR code or going to the URL, that bit.ly address just at the bottom of the screen, just to register attendance for two reasons. One, we can share the slides easily with you afterwards, so you get all the fantastic information that Latitude Law are going to share with you. And secondly as well, it just really helps us to get a sense of who's coming along to career service events. Just really helps with our planning to make sure that what we're putting out there is really relevant for you. So the QR code's on there on screen. If you're able to do that, that'd be absolutely brilliant. But otherwise, we will get started. I'm just going to see if my clicker's behaving itself, which I don't think it is, so we might just go for the keyboard approach. Sorry about that, folks. Right, okay. So let's just give you a bit of a summary of what we're going to cover today then. So obviously, the main reason that you'll all be logging on here is to hear from Latitude Law. So they are going to give you an overview of immigration options following graduation. So some really, really useful information there. As well as that as well, we've got Maren here, who is going to give you an alumni's perspective of dealing with visas. So we're really lucky to have Maren as part of the career service working with us now. And Maren is a former University of Manchester student as well. So you'll get Maren's perspective too. Then, all importantly, we'll give you a chance to ask your questions. So if you're on Zoom at the moment, please do put your questions in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll look to collate them, see if there's any kind of recurring themes, and then we will put them to Latitude Law a bit later on in the session. And also we'll give those of you in the room as well a chance to ask your questions too. And then finally, hopefully we've got enough time, because what I would also really like to do is shout about some support from the Careers Service. I'm Gareth Fryer. I'm a careers consultant from the Careers Service. And I just want to hopefully be able to give you a chance just to hear about all of the amazing resources and support that we've got for you throughout your time at the University of Manchester and for 2 years after you graduate as well. But clicker's back working now, so that's good news. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Jess and Victoria from Latitude Law, who are going to take you through your immigration options following graduation.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. So I'm Victoria. I'm one of the trainee solicitors at Latitude Law, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Jess, who's one of our solicitors. Latitude Law focuses only on immigration. So this is all that we do. We keep track of all the changes in the immigration rules, and I think we're well placed to support anybody who needs help. Today, we're going to be following the general route that you could follow after graduation. So we'll look at the graduate route in a bit more detail and the skilled worker route in a bit more detail. We're going to summarize with a few more options at the end, and then we'll take questions. And we're also including our email address. So if there's something that occurs to you after our talk today that you want to check with us, do feel free to email us. And someone in the team in Latitude Law will be happy to get back to you and help. So I'm going to start today just by looking initially at work conditions for students. So right now, wherever you're up to with your course, there are conditions on your leave as a student. So if you are full-time at degree level here, I think most of you will know that as you're at an approved higher education provider like the University of Manchester, you're able to work part-time during term time up to 20 hours per week. When you are in vacation time, that work could increase to full-time work. So really, the Home Office is envisaging you working, around your studies. Your primary focus as a student is to be completing your course. So that's why these restrictions exist. Obviously, we've included some other information there for you. Like, obviously, you can be undertaking work if it's part of your course, if there's a work placement embedded into what you're doing. And if you're on a more vocational program like doctor or dentistry, that is also permitted. Throughout our slides, we do have information about student union sabbatical offices because from the Home Office's perspective, this is a kind of different subset and there are different rules around somebody in that category. So I'm going to leave it there on the slide, but if anybody is working in that way and you have any questions, do let us know. I think as well, a lot of students are quite aware of the fact that there are restrictions on whether you can be self-employed and engaging in business activity. But that does change if you are making an application as a startup migrant. So if somebody is coming towards the end of their study and they're looking to move to that next stage. There's often prohibitions throughout the immigration rules on people working as a professional sports person or an entertainer. So if there is something that you think is broaching into those areas, I would definitely seek advice so that you do not breach the conditions of your leave. Students also cannot fulfill a full-time permanent vacancy. So this is a little bit more complex. Again, that does change if you're in the student union, you're working as a sabbatical officer, or if it connects to a recognizable foundation program. Again, if you're in doubt, I would seek advice just to make sure that you're abiding by the terms of your current leave. We're going to start looking ahead a little bit to when those work conditions change as we get into a bit more detail about the graduate route. But if a student were to submit an in time, so before the expiry of your leave as a student, you're submitting a valid application, your work conditions do change slightly. So if you submitted a graduate application, there is a possibility to start employment once you've completed your course. If it's skilled worker, can start employment in your full-time permanent vacancy 3 months prior to your course completion date. So if you are in contact with a prospective employer, you know they're offering you that skilled worker, that could change when you're starting your position. However, we do think it's important. This is a common question with course completion. Your course isn't complete until all those modules are sorted, and that does include dissertation. And I know that that can take a slightly longer time. You may have finished your exams, but your dissertation is still pending approval. Okay, I'm going to start looking into a bit more detail about the graduate route. This is a fairly new route. It's been running since 2021. And it's available to international students who have, and again, there's that successful completion of your course. So that term successful completion, again, all those modules have been marked. And the opportunities with the graduate route are that you can live and work in the UK for 2 years. You could potentially apply for 3 years if you are on a doctoral program. And I know we've included this point in the slide that from January, there was talk in the media that this route, the length of this route was going to be reduced. So nothing further has come of that. So right now it still remains a 2-year period of leave. But I think this does show you how the immigration rules and the different categories are subject to change with UK government. So if you're ever in doubt about something, I would always seek advice. It's the dynamic nature of the immigration field. It's also important to note that with the graduate route, you can't extend that visa. So it's essentially, say you were just doing a standard bachelor's degree and you got granted 2 years leave, that's your one opportunity as a graduate. So you couldn't go on to do a job, return to be a student, and then apply again for the graduate route. It's a 2-year opportunity at the moment, or 3 years if you're on a doctoral program. So another slight drawback of the graduate route is that this is not a route to settlement, but you can use the time that you accrue on the graduate route to make an application for long residence, if that applies to you. I'm going to look a bit more about the logistics of this route. So it covers different validity, eligibility, and suitability requirements. A lot of immigration applications cover these categories, and you may be already familiar with them if you've applied as a student previously. So validity is all about doing the right thing, and again, at the right time. So using the right form, paying the right charges. We've summarized the fee for a graduate application on my slide, as well as the fees for the immigration health surcharge. Currently unchanged, still £624 per year. There's been no increase. They do tend to increase in April, but so far nothing seems to be pending. You must enroll your biometric information, so your fingerprints and photograph, but it is possible that you could do this using an app, using the IDV app. You're going to have to send supporting evidence to the Home Office. Again, this could be uploaded via the app, even if you're attending a biometric centre in person. There's an opportunity to upload your correct documents. You're going to need to prove your identity, your nationality, so submitting things such as your valid passport, your biometric residence permit. You'll also need to be in the UK. So this application for graduate needs to be submitted while you're here. And most importantly, you need to submit your graduate application when you have or have last been granted leave as a student. So if for any reason your immigration permission has changed and you are no longer considered a student, for instance, if you were to leave the UK and come back as a visitor, that would not mean that you were eligible. That would not meet the validity requirements. So you must last have been granted leave as a student to apply in this route. Some of the evidence changes. If somebody sponsored you or you had a scholarship, you may need to provide evidence of that when you're applying. And typically, I know we've put here that decisions normally come in about 8 weeks, but they can be fairly fast. But there is no opportunity to pay the Home Office to give you a decision faster. So with other types of visas, maybe you can pay a priority fee, but not with a graduate route. You will have to wait for the Home Office to come back to you, but they are typically fairly fast. Suitability requirements apply to, again, the majority of immigration applications. These really focus on your character and your behaviour in the UK. So essentially, if you've ever breached immigration laws, this could be an issue. It could be something small, like a period of overstaying potentially in the past. You can't be on immigration bail. I think the things that we thought we would want you as students to consider would be small things that maybe you won't consider, like NHS charges. Make sure that you've paid all your NHS charges, because this could be a reason under suitability to refuse an application. The general grounds are far more serious. If there's criminality in your past, or there's only been a form of deception, reliance on any sorts of false documentation with the Home Office, this could again cause a problem with the application. Eligibility. This focuses on the points-based system. I'm sure you may have heard this touted in the media previously. Essentially, they're looking for you to score 70 points. So successful completion of study, that I've spoken a lot about, to keep emphasizing this term because it can be challenging in practice. What you have studied needs to tick a qualification requirement, and you must have studied in the UK for at least 12 months. I do know that the pandemic, made this a little bit more challenging. We've covered that on a slide later on if you think that this might have affected you. Okay, successful course completion. If you're here at the University of Manchester, you are already studying with a higher education provider who has that track record of compliance, who is trusted as your sponsor. So that box is automatically ticked. So successfully completing and studying your course during your GLAS granted permission to study. Again, we're focused on making sure that the university is confident to tell the Home Office that, yes, you have successfully passed all of your modules. This can become a bit more complicated if there was, for example, one module that you need to retake, restudy. There can be harder routes to follow there. But again, if you think you are maybe not going to meet successful course completion, I do think it is important that you seek advice. There may be something else that you can do if your university understands that there is a need for something to be perhaps marked quicker, if your dissertation could be graded faster, for instance. There's always conversation to be had. If you have changed your course of study, for instance, and you didn't need to make another student application, you must have finished that course that you have changed to. Essentially, what you're looking for here is for the university to be able to confidently tell the Home Office that, yes, you have completed your course. And that course must meet the qualification requirements. So if you're studying a bachelor's degree or any other form of postgraduate degree, that should meet the requirements. We thought we put on the slides here that this also covers more vocational qualifications, such as anything in the legal sector, medical, dentistry sector. So again, this should meet the requirements. I have at the end that little bit of information about student union sabbatical officers, because again, that is slightly different. There's that slight extra detail. So if that's you, do pay attention to that. And if you need any help, do contact Latitude. Okay, so the study in the UK requirements. If your course was shorter than 12 months, then you've got to have been in the UK for the full duration of that course. You must have been here all of that time. Longer, then again, at least 12 months, you must have been here in the UK. But the Home Office have recognised that COVID did clearly disrupt the ability for people to be here. So if there was any distance learning that may have occurred between 2020 and 2022, the requirement could still be met. And so if your course started 12 months or less before the 21st of June 2021, and you came to the UK without permission as a student on or before the 27th of September 2021. I'll leave the other dates there for you, but again, if you think that this applies to you and you are concerned in any way that you wouldn't be able to meet that study in the UK requirement because of complications due to the pandemic, again, do reach out to us. So if you are successfully granted leave as a graduate, you get two years leave typically, or 3 years if you're a PhD student, and you have a lot of freedom. You know, you can undertake employment, self-employment, even voluntary work. The prohibitions remain that often apply to many immigration applications. You can't suddenly become a professional footballer. You can't access the welfare system. And you can study, but the Home Office does not envisage that your leave as a graduate is taking you back to something similar when you were a student. So whatever you're studying, it shouldn't be something that the Home Office would also grant you leave for as a student. I think an important difference is if you've used the IDV app, your status is digital only. You will not be issued a biometric residence permit. If you already had one and you went to a biometric centre, yes, you will get a new permit. I think a small point that maybe some of you may have noted is that all biometric residence permits will expire on the 31st of December 2024. So the government is envisaging a move completely to digital status. And so any new permits that you are issued now will have that expiry date. It is not technically the expiry date of your leave, it's the expiry date of those permits, because the technology within them is not going to be suitable for purpose much longer. If you have family members, if you have dependents, they are able to apply with you on the graduate route. You're going to have to meet certain relationship requirements. You're going to have to prove that your relationship with your partner is genuine and subsisting, showing that you need to live together throughout your stay in the UK. I think dependent children as well, if you're under the age of 18 at the date of application, we need to show that they're not leading an independent life. Oh, sorry, if you're age 16 or over, so if someone is slightly older, we want to prove that they are still dependent on you. And that there's suitable arrangements for their care and accommodation in the UK. So you're showing your parental responsibility for that child and that they are accommodated properly. So I think there are a lot of benefits in the graduate route. You are quite free. You could, for instance, work for any employer. They don't have to be a sponsor license holder to employ you. So that's a key difference between the skilled worker route and the graduate route. We envisage that it gives you that chance to find your footing in the UK. You know, perhaps after you finished your studies, you have an opportunity to then explore a little bit further whether there's an employer that you wish to remain here and work for. And as I said before, whilst it's not a route to settlement, it can be counted on a 10-year-long residence route. And also, you are able to switch from the graduate route to another qualifying route. So you could make an in-country application to something that does lead to settlement, such as the skilled worker route. So I think that is part of what the government envisages. If you do want to remain in the UK after your time on the graduate route, there is the opportunity to make another immigration application and switch. The questions that we often get about the graduate route are, can you submit before you get those final results? So as I said previously, you know, your university needs to be able to tell the Home Office that you've completed that course. If the Home Office haven't received that notification, in the guidance, it does say that a Home Office caseworker should contact the university to confirm. But it does delay consideration. It can take longer. It could present some risks to your application. We also recommend that there's no delay in your sponsor, in your university, telling the Home Office that you've completed if you haven't paid all your course fees. This could be something very small, very minor that delays your sponsor being able to confidently tell the Home Office that, yes, I've completed my course. With the name of your course changing, if your university, for any reason, changed the name of your course, but the content is the same, that's fine. It does happen, I think, with rebranding of courses, but it's fine for the purposes of your application. With the Study in the UK requirements, essentially, if you haven't been here at all, there is going to be an issue we envisage with your application. And for student union sabbatical officers, I'll leave that question there if there's any in the room at all. So the type of documents you're going to need: identity documents, your passport, your biometric residence permit, and you're going to want that key evidence that you've completed your degree, your qualification. If somebody did sponsor you, any money was given to you through a scholarship or sponsorship at all, they should provide a letter to agree to your application. Often somebody that's invested in your studies may have a specific idea about your career path after your studies. So really, we want to prove to the Home Office that you are free to make this application despite that financial assistance that you may have received. If you have your dependents applying with you, again, we're going to need a lot of identity documents to prove who they are and proof of your relationship. And if they're minor dependents, proof of their dependence on you. So again, I think a lot of that maybe not too unexpected. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jess, who's going to talk to you a little bit now about the skilled worker route. So another option for you.
Okay, so yeah, if an alternative, if you already get an offer for suitably skilled employment, is to switch straight away into the skilled worker route from the student route. One advantage of that is that because the skilled worker route is a 5-year route to settlement, you're getting on that route to settlement earlier. Obviously, as Victoria said, the graduate isn't a route to settlement, but skilled worker is. The requirements of the skilled worker route, again, like the graduate route, there's validity, suitability, and eligibility. And the validity and suitability are similar to the graduate route, so same sort of requirements there. So the skilled worker eligibility requirements, again, it's a point-based route, and you need to get 70 points. So that's divided into 50 mandatory points and then 20 trainable points. And of those 50 mandatory points, there's 20 for sponsorship, 20 for a job at an appropriate skill level, 10 points for English language skills. And we're just going to take a closer look at those mandatory points. So firstly, 20 points for sponsorship. So that's having a certificate of sponsorship from an employer that holds a sponsor license. You can find a list of all the sponsor license holders online. So as it says there's a register available. So that will be employers who already hold a sponsor license for skilled workers, and so would be able to assign you a certificate of sponsorship. And you can't make the application without that certificate. And you would also need to show that you have a genuine offer of employment from that employer. Then there's another 20 points for job and appropriate skill level. So what that means is that the job that you want to do, that you've been offered, is listed under either appendix skilled occupations or on the shortage occupation list. So if the job that you want to do is a type of work that isn't listed on there, it's probably not going to be something that you can get a skilled worker visa to do. The shortage occupation list, that's a list of certain job roles, and that does tend to change. So it's not always the same jobs that are listed on there. And as it says as well, some jobs do also require an ATAS certificate. So usually kind of scientific engineering type jobs, so there are some other ones that also require that certificate. And then lastly, English language. As it says there, a UK taught bachelor's, master's degree or doctorate will suffice. And so you normally provide your degree certificate, grade transcript, or else a letter from the university confirming what it would normally say on a certificate. If you don't have that type of qualification, it might be that you need to take a Home Office approved test in speaking, listening, reading and writing, and that would need to be a type of test specifically approved by the Home Office. Now, just looking at these tradable points, the tradable points, yeah, as it says, they largely relate to salary. So as a general rule, someone applying for a skilled worker visa must earn at least 26,200 a year, and £10.75 an hour, but also the going rate for the occupation code. So that means that some job roles will have occupation codes that might be a lot higher than 26,200. So your salary would also need to meet that. As it says there are some circumstances where those salary rates can be reduced. So one example is if you're a new entrant. There's various ways you can qualify as a new entrant. So for example, if you're under the age of 26, you're classed as a new entrant. If you most recently had leave as a student or on the graduate route, and that was within the last 2 years, that can be a new entrant as well. There's various other ways you can do it. And as it says there, you must have successfully completed the course or a PhD. Things like relevant PhD, that's another one. So if you qualify as a new entrant, then the rate that your salary has to meet is reduced. So it's reduced to 20,960 a year for that general salary requirement. Still £10.70 an hour, 75, sorry, but also for the going rate, so there's rates that vary between the different job roles, then you only have to show that you would be paid 70% of the listed rate, so that's quite a big reduction. If you're going to be sponsored in a job that's listed on that shortage occupation list that I mentioned before, it would be as above, but it's an 80% reduction. So you need to show that your salary would be 80% at least of the going rate listed for that type of job. And PhD in a relevant subject is 23,580, still 1075, and then you would be able to you would only need to be able to show that we're going to receive 90% of the salary listed on the going rates table. There are some other reductions too, more specific ones that depend on the type of qualification and role, but they're the main ones. And I guess for students of new entrant is probably the most relevant one. There are also financial requirements for the skilled worker role. If you've been in the UK for 12 months or more, you don't need to satisfy the financial requirements. But if you've been in the UK for less than 12 months, or you're making an application from outside the UK, so an entry clearance application, you need to show that you have got at least £1,270 that would need to be in an account under your name or your joint name, unless your sponsor certifies maintenance. So on that certificate of sponsorship that I mentioned earlier, that the employer would have to allocate to you, they can choose to certify your maintenance, and that means that you don't need to show that you have those funds. Under the skilled worker route, again, this is an option where you can bring family members as your dependents, or they can remain in the UK as your dependents. And if that's the case, you then need to show you have extra funds for those other family members. So, for a partner and children, you would then need to show additional amounts. It's less than the 1,270, but it still makes the amount you have to meet higher. And then, as it says there, for some specific roles, you also need a criminal record certificate. That's usually for jobs where you're coming into contact with vulnerable people, so like caring jobs, jobs working with children, that type of thing. So conditions of status as a skilled worker. So usually leave as a skilled worker is granted for 3 or 5 years, and that's because the application fee changes if you've been granted for more than 3 years. So it's one fee for up to 3 years and one fee for up to 5 years. But it will depend. So when the employer gives you that certificate of sponsorship, it will state on the certificate how long you are being sponsored for, and then that's how long the leave will be granted for. It will come with a condition of no access to public funds, so can't use the benefit system. And you can only work in the role that you're being sponsored for. So the type of employment needs to be that role that the employer says you're doing. You can undertake some supplementary employment, roles listed on the shortage occupation list that I referred to before, or if it's something in the same profession, so what you're already being sponsored to do, for up to 20 hours a week. You can also do voluntary work, and as it says there, you can study, but it couldn't interfere with your work. So you still need to be doing the work that you're sponsored to do, the number of hours that you're supposed to be doing, but you could do some study provided it didn't interfere with you being able to do that. And as I mentioned before, this is a 5-year route to settlement. So once you've completed 5 years and continuous leave in that route, you would be eligible to apply to settlement, provided you met the other requirements of that type of application. So just going through the documents that an application for a skilled worker would need. So again, valid passport, BRP, if you have one, as Victoria said, and everyone has a BRP now. You would need that certificate of sponsorship. So as I said, you can't make the application until the employer has assigned that to you. So that's very important. Evidence how you're going to qualify for tradable points. So for example, as I said before, if you most recently had leave in a particular category, or if you are saying that you've got a relevant PhD, you need to provide evidence of, you know, having that particular qualification. Financial requirement documents, so bank statements, English language requirements, again, that might be a degree certificate, it might be that you sat an English language test, maybe a criminal record certificate, and again, if you received scholarship or sponsorship for your studies, a letter from the person who provided that consenting to your application. And again, if you've got family members who are applying as well, you would need obviously their ID, but also proof of their relationship with you. And if they're already living in the UK with you, proof that they live with you in this country. So that was just an overview of the graduate route. And then lastly, just to look at a few other options. If you're the family member of a British or settled migrant, or someone who is sponsored themselves, so they might have leave as a skilled worker, then you might be able to apply for leave on the basis of that relationship. Another option is the innovator founder visa. So the startup route that you might have heard of, that has recently closed to new applicants. So the innovator founder is kind of replacement. It's very similar to the old innovator route, but there was a requirement for investment of £50,000, which has been removed. But something that's quite important for that is that you need to obtain an endorsement from an endorsing body for a viable business plan. Global talent based on exceptional talent or promise. Again, you need endorsement there. That's something, for example, if you happen to maybe won a certain award, or you've really attained a lot in your field, that might be something that's applicable to you. And as it said there, most of those routes are 5-year routes of settlement. So, for example, family member of a British migrant is usually a 5-year route to settlement. But innovator is 3 years, and global talent can be 3 years, depending on the type of endorsement that you receive. And lastly, how can Latitude Law help? So we offer 3 free 30-minute consultations. As you can see there, we have a dedicated email inquiry address. We can guide you through the whole process with a consultation, a letter of advice to make sure that you understand all the requirements, any possible issues and how to address those. And as it says, we can assist with all aspects of the process. And we'll also draft a letter of representations to the Home Office to explain how you meet the requirements. So yes, as I said, we've got that email address there. So any queries that you have regarding immigration related queries can be answered through contacting that email. So, thank you.
Thanks. So we're handing over to you, Maren, now. So Maren has direct experience of applying as a graduate, so she's going to share her insights with you.
Hello. So my name is Maren Kuzmak. I am an alumni of the University of Manchester, and I'm currently on the graduate visa. So I'll just walk you through my experience. This is not how it's going to be for any of you because it's different for everyone depending on your situation. So I initially applied for a skilled worker visa during the summer after my final year of university. I graduated last year as an undergrad, and I applied for a skilled worker visa in the summer for a role that I had got, teaching at a school that would have granted me a 5-year worker visa. Already had some issues with the application. I received an email from the Home Office saying you've made an error. And this is just to say, it's fine if you make a little mistake because they do give you an opportunity to correct it. I think I had accidentally checked a box wrong, so pay attention. But it was okay. I filled out a new one. And they do give you that opportunity to do it again. They don't just reject you if they can tell that it's just a mistake rather than a violation of policy. Now, there were some issues with the job that I had in which they were dishonest about the pay, and obviously the salary requirement is important for the skilled worker route. So that is kind of the main crux of this whole story. I had to withdraw the in-progress application. This was in October, and my student visa expired at the end of October of 2022. So I applied for the graduate visa pretty shortly after I had withdrawn that in-progress worker application. And I had to obviously terminate employment from that job because it was full-time permanent position, which is not permitted on a student visa or the in-progress graduate route. It may have changed, but I don't know. So my main tips here is obviously to do your research early, which you're all doing by being here today, because knowing all of your options helps you if you run into an issue. Sometimes these things don't go smoothly because it's a really complicated process. And as long as you know what options are available to you, that's going to give you the best chance in being successful. So please take advantage of consultations with immigration advisors. Please take advantage of Latitude Law or anyone else that you have at your disposal. Something I didn't know until this whole process started was you can contact your local member of parliament who will reach out to the Home Office for you. And that's kind of a more direct line of communication with the Home Office. So they are able to communicate about an application that is in progress. So that's what I did because I was quite concerned that there would be a gray area kind of between me quitting the job and me not having any work status in the UK. So I contacted my local MP in Manchester, and he was able to reach out to them, explain that situation just to ensure that I was not in violation of any working rules. So please use all the resources you have available. I say it's not a black and white process, it is, but they will say, but it's the door is never closed unless you ask. There's always a conversation to be had with your university, with immigration advisors, with the MP, etc. So the application process, again, this was my experience. I received my decision in 8 weeks. I applied for the graduate route in October of 2022, and I got the decision in about 8 weeks, maybe even 7. The estimated time was 12 weeks. So it was kind of a high period of applications because a lot of student visas do expire at the end of October. So I think that's probably why it was a busy time for the Home Office. And unfortunately, there is no way to expedite, but do be relieved that I got the decision 4 to 5 weeks earlier than predicted. So it is usually pretty smooth. The longest part of the application I found was you have to notate every date you leave and arrive to the United Kingdom. So make life easier for yourself and get that information ready to go, as well as your parent legal guardian info ready. That was honestly the most annoying part of the application for me, is just the tediousness of notating everything. Otherwise, it's a very straightforward application. There's nothing difficult about it. Now, my experience finding work in the UK, initially, I obviously tried to find skilled worker sponsorship. But now being on the graduate route, I'm very happy because it does offer you the freedom of not working, taking a gap year if you want, and then going into work and then finding skilled worker sponsorship. You just have more freedom in the country. I currently work at the University of Manchester. Little plug for the career service. I work at the career service. It's wonderful. But a lot of employers don't actually know about the graduate route yet. It is relatively new, and I found this as an applicant. Many are reluctant to hire foreign workers, unfortunately, still. And because this route doesn't require sponsorship, I didn't often disclose that I was necessarily on a visa, because if there were certain jobs I applied for that were not permanent, they were like fixed term, 1 year, 2 years, and as that does not violate or go past what's granted on the graduate route, you don't need to ask them for sponsorship. They don't need to pay any extra fees to hire you. Again, doing your research and understanding your rights as an international and what you do and do not have to disclose to employers is important. Obviously, you do need to conduct right to work checks. You cannot lie about your immigration status, but you don't, they need to understand that they don't need to sponsor you. They don't need to pay any extra fee to hire you. And now that brings us to the end of my little spiel. And now we will take any questions you have for me, or more importantly, Latitude Law. They can take any kind of legal questions that you have. For those of you in the Zoom chat, please type your questions in the chat and we will go through them and answer them. We're going to alternate between in person and on Zoom, more or less. So if anyone would like, yes.
I have a few questions about you.
Yes.
So question number one is, so what if you start off with the graduate visa, you get a job, and you get a PhD opportunity like afterwards? What is the time of the PhD, or what?
Okay,
So you've gone on a graduate visa,
Yep.
and you've been working, but in that time you applied for a PhD and you got through the PhD. Do you get a new student visa, or?
I see. So could you switch back? So you're on graduate. Can I switch back to student?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a prohibition off the top of my head. I'm going to check the rules for you. But you wouldn't. So then you switch back to student. You would then not be able to come back to graduate. There's only one opportunity to be on the graduate route. So even though I think you're thinking correctly that technically, yes, my last leave would have been as a student, there is that cap that's built in to the immigration rules. So you wouldn't be able to come back to it. So you'd have that one chance for graduate, essentially. Yeah, so if you're completing a PhD and then yes, you've got that secure offer of employment, you've got a registered sponsor who is willing to give you that certificate of sponsorship, and all of the other requirements are ticked. You've got the right salary, and you're happy to be with that company, because they then become your sponsor. Your leave is tied to them. Then that should be fine.
So I think somewhere you said that you didn't have to be there for 12 months. What about if you went for vacation for like 2 years?
So the point where we said you have to have studied in the UK for the graduate route. So yes, if you taking your standard trips, back to the UK, as Maren said, the tediousness with, yeah, they're going to want to know, but that we don't mean that you must not have left the UK at all in that 12 months, but you must have studied in the UK. So they're envisaging like maybe remote work, remote learning, sorry, not remote working, remote learning. But as Maren suggested, I think it is a great idea to keep track of your absences.
Because I had to go back and find all my flight receipts, and it was a nightmare of a process. But we're here. But yeah, please. I left for summer. I left for Christmas. I left for Easter. It's term time study. It's not the outside of term time. You're free to go home or wherever.
So for the question, so how do the whole way? Is it not like the best case scenario is to make like complete the entire course?
Yes.
Or try like
You can't start earlier. So I didn't have to ask the university to send the completion of the course to the home office. They will do that automatically. I have heard of some people having to ask, but I don't think that usually it's just are you undergrad or okay. Postgrad, okay. So when you complete your dissertation or your final project or whatever the last thing of your course, once that is complete, you can apply. It doesn't have to be after graduation though. Your graduation could be at any time because that's obviously just dependent on when the university has your graduation.
So this is where I guess my last question. Let's say I've completed the dissertation and I applied, but I'm still in the UK. Is that okay for me?
You have to be in the UK, yes.
So okay, so it's not like it's like a breach that like okay, I've graduated and I have my new visa.
No, because your student visa will probably have some months after the end of your course, but it depends on.
Okay, no, sure. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
It's on my matching.
Yes, it is. I believe I personally just reached out to my course administrator to check that, but it is also on my placement student system. It will be somewhere, or you can ask your course administrator and they could just confirm that they have sent that over. We are going to go over to a question here. Okay, this one's quick. So just wondering whether the working in the career service at the university, can they provide a skilled worker visa? I actually don't know. I do know the university does offer skilled worker visas, but it will depend on the role. Again, I'm on the MGT internship scheme, which is a 1-year-long internship. So this role wouldn't sponsor because it's only a year long. And that is well within the realm of the graduate visa. For other positions, full-time positions, I know they probably do sponsor. Ghazi is on a skilled worker visa. Yeah.
I think that you have to have applied for a particular level of
Yeah.
job, which meets then the minimum salary requirement.
So yeah, it will depend.
Yeah.
So anybody wanting to work for the career service, obviously you're welcome to apply for an MGT as part of a graduate route, but you have to check to see whether or not you meet the minimum salary requirements. And it's not the career service that sponsors with the University of Manchester that sponsors. They are our employees.
Yes, again, the university is a licensed sponsor, but again, it will depend on the nature of the role. I hope that helps. Any in-person questions to take? Yes.
Thank you so much. One is, you obviously mentioned that you can apply as soon as you hear back or as soon as you finish everything for university. I will be on holiday for a month and then I'll be back here in July, which is when I'm graduating. However, my work starts exactly 8 weeks after, or like 2 months after. So it's very tight. And I'm wondering if I can apply then and still be able to start work on time, or do you think there would be issues with that?
Depends on.
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends a bit on the type of work. If you submit, so if you have a student visa and then you then submit an application to the graduate route and that application is outstanding, or to skilled worker route, you can already start working in a permanent full-time position. But you can't do that if you just hold leave as a student. But if you were waiting for the outcome of the application, you can then start that employment, but you have to have completely finished your course. So if you had something outstanding, you know, if you were still finishing the dissertation or something, you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you've completed everything, you've submitted an application for graduate or skilled worker and you're waiting to hear back, you can already start working in a permanent full-time position. Yeah. So they would need to use the checking service, and you would have a reference number then, and so they can then check online and it would show that you have a pending application. If you still have leave as a student, I think anyway it would show your student leave, but because it's outside term time, it would then show, you know, the 20 hours a week during term time, for example. But as soon as your, like, say your student leave expired, but you submitted that in-time graduate application, it would then show that you've got an outstanding application.
Yeah. Just conscious of time, we still want to hear from the career service. We're just going to take 2 of these really quick questions here from the online chat, and then everyone will have an opportunity after here to speak further to Latitude Law. So this is asking about, what does new entrant mean? And would be, so this person would be applying for a job for the first time. Is that what a new entrant is? Would you like to just quickly?
Yes, so new entrant, there's various ways you can meet new entrant. If you most recently held leave as a student and successfully completed the course, that's one way of qualifying as a new entrant. If you most recently held leave as a graduate, and again successfully completed your course, that's another way, but it has to be within the last 2 years. So if you, for example, were in the UK with leave as a student, completed your course, but then left for 3 years, could no longer be a new entrant then, if you're relying on that requirement.
And last one here, is there a way to check whether an employer is an eligible sponsor and what kind of positions they sponsor? There is a full database PDF on the UK website somewhere, and Latitude Law has it linked in the slides.
Yeah.
That will be shared with all of you after the presentation, where you can check every UK employer that's on there. All right, that is it from us. You will have an opportunity to ask them more questions after we're done here, and I will pass you on to Gareth.
Thanks very much, everyone. Right, what I'm going to do is let me just share the presentation again, just so we can get the slides back on. Oh, excuse me, sorry, I'll just circle through to the career service slides, because what I want to do is just give you, as I say, just a bit of an overview very, very quickly, because I'm aware that we're finishing the session at 4 o'clock, just on the support that the career service can give you. So the career service, just to introduce ourselves properly, we are a team of professionals from a wide range of backgrounds. So from academia, from teaching, from HR, you name it. And we use that expertise and that experience to provide you with independent advice, guidance, and information regarding careers. Now, how do we do that? Well, one key resource I would recommend using is the careers service website. It really is your careers encyclopedia. We've got 500 pages of detailed information on there. Now, we've not got time to go through all of that, and frankly, you wouldn't want me to. But in terms of highlighting a couple of things today that might be specifically useful for those of you on this within this session, we've got the Which Career section of the website. Which Career section of the website is brilliant because it covers 2 things. First of all, if you're just not sure about what you want to do in terms of a career, which I promise you is the most common question that we get from people, you're not alone at all. Go to the Which Career section of the website. We have a page specifically for I don't know what I want to do, with tools to help you to think about your skills, your motivations, to start matching you up with possible career paths. There's also sector-specific pages within the Which Career website, so you can find out about different career areas and whether they might be right for you. In particular as well, you can see that there's another label there, which is for the international section of our website. So if you want to be signposted to information about visas following on today, if you want to find latitude laws, contact information on there, if you want to find, for example, an example of how you might show an employer how you are eligible to work in the UK, just through a simple sentence on your application form, we've got an example on there. So really, really worth checking out that international section with regards to this session. Moving on very quickly, as I said, this will be whistle stop. As well as the Career Service website, we've also got Career Connect. So if the website's your encyclopedia, then Career Connect's sort of your toolkit, really. Now, you'll all be aware of Career Connect because that's how you would have booked onto today's session, but you can see the labels on screen. There is so much more than just booking events on Career Connect. So the search drop down through that, you can find more events, so skills workshops, alumni panels, but also jobs, internships and placements on our jobs board. Do have a look at that. If after today, it's kind of sparked your interest in terms of thinking about careers, you want to talk things through, go to the book drop down in the center of the screen, have a look at all of our different options for supporting you. We run one-to-one appointments, both on campus and online, ranging from 15-minute getting started appointments just to get you going, through to 30-minute appointments to help you sort of unpick your motivations, or perhaps you're choosing between two different career paths, and all the way through to 60-minute appointments for students who self-identify as having a disability. As well as that, we'll help you with, we've got CV checks, interview simulations, application checks, all different types of support. As well as that, I wanted to draw your attention to our pathways. So you can see the purple roundel on the screen there in terms of pathways. Now, all our pathways they're bundles, essentially. It's where we bring together all of our best resources in easy to access packages, essentially. And there are loads of different pathways there. We've got a CV pathway with an AI CV checker, so you can upload your CV and get it ready for the UK job market. But in particular, perhaps the most relevant for this session is our Get Ready International Students pathway. So that's all of our resources for international students, all of our information put together in one easily accessible place. And what might be particular use within that pathway is something called the eCareers Grad tool. And that's where you can go into the pathway and you can use that to see which UK employers have the best track records of sponsoring international students under the skilled worker visa. So it's a really useful way of seeing the employers out there who are most amenable, or have the best track record, I should say, because they all should be amenable, but have the best track record of sponsoring students under the skilled worker visa. And not only can you see UK employees in general, see a bit of a league table if you like, but you can also sift through and filter through by the sector as well. So you can see all the different sectors at the bottom of the screen there that the eGrads tool covers. So we've got technology and telecoms, we've got consulting, finance, then all the way through to pharmaceuticals and science, fast-moving consumer goods. So it covers a real range of the major employers in the UK. So it's really worth taking a look at. And you can see again, that's just an example of what you'll see when you click in to eCareers Grad. So you'll see the track record for previous years, and then also the recruitment areas, because some of these major businesses, they'll obviously recruit into different areas. So you can see, again, the track records to see if it's relating to jobs that you're interested in. And then at the bottom there, also the opportunity type. So not just graduate programs, but summer internships, placement years and things. So it's such a powerful tool. I really recommend using it for your research. As well as that, just a couple of tips very, very briefly. The vast majority of students will not go on to graduate schemes. You'll go on to what's called direct entry roles. So just advertise like any normal job, frankly. So don't just focus your energies, if you like, on graduate schemes. There are so many other options available for you. In terms of where to look, I mentioned the careers website earlier. Have a look at the Which Careers section of the website. Look at those sector-specific pages. They will have links to sector-specific job vacancy sites too. But remember also the vacancies board on Career Connect as well. LinkedIn and social media are incredibly powerful tools in your job search too. Again, the vast majority of roles aren't actually advertised through job adverts, okay? They are advertised maybe through LinkedIn, through connections and things. So Follow companies that you're interested in on LinkedIn. Follow their social media accounts. You'll be surprised by the opportunities that pop up there, particularly in industries such as heritage and the creative and cultural industries, for example. And speculative approaches as well. So that means sending your CV off, sending a cover letter off to companies to say that you're interested in working for them in a particular role. Now, that's a very particular type of technique. Can't just send out one CV to lots of different companies. You've got to tailor it. You've got to tailor your cover letter, but it can be a very powerful strategy. All of the information you'll need can be accessed via the QR code, which will take you to our job search strategies section of the website. So do check it out. Just finally, we wanted to point out that as a career service, we understand that not everybody's experience of searching for a career will be universal. You're all unique, and depending on how you identify, that may affect your experience of entering the job market. So do check out our equality pages, because there are lots and lots of links to services out there that can support you depending on how you identify. And then just finally, as I said, this was going to be a very quick whistle-stop tour in terms of the career service. If you want to get in touch with us, and please do, we really recommend that you do, there are lots of different ways to do so. We've got web chat. You can ask a question on Career Connect. We've got our social media via @UOM-Careers, and you can come and see us too. So we're on the first floor in the atrium of University Place, so the Tin Can building on Oxford Road. Drop in between 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock Monday to Thursday, and 11 till 1 on a Friday. Our Linktree page there, that's where the QR code links to, will give you all of that information. And remember, as I said before, we are here to support you every step of the way, not just while you're studying with us now, not just while you're in your third year, but in your first year, your second year, your third year, and for 2 years after you graduate as well. Come and speak to us. We really want to help. And then finally, that's just the end of my section. So thank you so much for coming along today, both those of you online and in the room as well. We really do hope that you found today useful. If you could take 60 minutes, don't take 60 minutes, for goodness sake. Take 60 seconds, take just a minute, just to scan the QR code and tell us what you thought. We really appreciate it. It feeds into our planning to make sure that we are providing relevant sessions to you. All you need to do is just provide the event name at the bottom of the screen, so navigating visas and immigration, and then you've got our presenter names, Gareth and Maren, there too. So if you have got 1 minute, not 1 hour, to spare to give us that information, we would really appreciate it. But thank you so much for coming along. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you so much to Latitude Law as well for coming along. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, good. Yeah,
The mics are still live on Zoom, so it might be worth moving away from the desk.
I need the room. Bring the rules.
Thanks so much, everyone. I'll just leave that QR code up for those of you on Zoom who want to take time just to give some feedback. But thank you so much for coming along, and I'll close down the session in just a moment. Check whether we'll receive the live. So as long as you've registered for the session, the start of the session, then yeah, we'll check those. No problem. Thanks very much.